We have lots to talk about in this evening's video. All kinds of rumors floating around the NHL today. It's been a very newsy type day, especially when it comes to speculation around teams in the state of New York. Apparently there was a major players-only meeting with the New York Rangers that really got a lot of things off their chest, and we could certainly see some changes there. We'll discuss what we learned from that meeting, what they'd like to see, and some potential moves that may come from it. Certainly a few players that we're going to discuss on that roster. Plus, in Buffalo, there was another big meeting, including owner Terry Pegula going out to meet the team in Montreal. Had a big meeting with the players, ownership, and management. We'll discuss what we know there. Plus, more speculation out of Vancouver. A little bit of talk around the Miller, Besser, and Pettersson situations. We could be seeing a big move coming there in the near future. In Montreal, apparently looking to get out of LTIR on a long-term basis, might involve trading star goaltender Carey Price's contract, since he's not likely ever going to play again. All that plus the stars of the week and some news from the waiver wire coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today. It's been a very newsy day, especially in the world of NHL rumors. We'll discuss everything we've heard and some of the things that we do know for sure. Let's start first with the waiver wire news. We've had a lot of waiver wire activity in the past week. I suspect we'll see a little bit more before the end of this Friday, because obviously as of Friday the 20th, there is a roster freeze for a week for the Christmas holidays, so there will be no movement at that point. So you're probably going to see teams either make a last minute trade or two, or any kind of players that they need to send down or what have you. Probably some more activity in the next few days, you would think. But today we had Minnesota Wild placing forward Devon Shore on waivers. We'll find out tomorrow if he remains with the Wild and can be reassigned, or if he's been picked up. The NHL announced its 3 stars of the week. We got some great performances, some top players, and a goaltender getting his first recognition for this season. The first star of the week was Oilers sniper Leon Draisaitl, who leads the league in goals. Draisaitl put up 3 goals and 9 points over 3 games this past week, had a phenomenal showing. Second star of the week's Nathan MacKinnon, also had 9 points in 3 games. And the third star of the week is Senators goalie Linus Ullmark, who has certainly been in a groove lately and has not lost in regulation in his past 6 starts. This past week he played in 3 games himself, with a goals against average under 1.99 as well as a .967 save percentage, including a shutout in one of those games. So certainly Ullmark has been absolutely phenomenal, been the backbone of the Senators and their recent success here in the last win streak that they've been on. They won the last 3 and they've won 7 of their last 10, and Ullmark has played a major role in that process. A few other quick roster updates before we jump into all of the rumor mill information for today. The Buffalo Sabres, after playing him against the Toronto Maple Leafs, they've sent goalie Devin Levi back to the American Hockey League. The Devils also confirmed that goaltender Jake Allen is better, and he's back with the team and will be with them on their upcoming trip. And the Pittsburgh Penguins have confirmed the defenseman Marcus Pettersson, who we know got hurt in that game on Saturday against the Senators, is now out week to week. We know he left the game, didn't return. Looked like it was some sort of leg injury. All they've said was lower body week to week. So definitely a blow. And of course, he's also a player that's been heavily rumored to maybe be on the move this year. So again, we'll probably have to wait for that to heal up and get him back to good health here before we likely see a trade. Now, as I mentioned, four teams really that we're focusing on tonight. A couple in the state of New York. Then there's some Canucks and Montreal stuff. Let's start for a change with the Montreal Canadiens. I came across an article discussing the Montreal Canadiens today. I believe it was Marco D'Amico wrote the article. Made some good points that the Montreal Canadiens, over the next several months, would really like to get out of operating in long-term injury reserve. Apparently, which makes sense, their goal coming into this year, really dating back to this past offseason, was originally to hopefully not operate in LTIR this year. However, the opportunity arose for them to acquire Patrick Laine. It kind of made it difficult not to do that. Now, it's not impossible that they could get out of LTIR this year, and it'll depend on what they move for some of the pending UFAs or veterans that may not be returning next year. However, it's like I said, it's going to, they could push this into the summer. We'll see. But either way, by next season at the latest, if not later this year, they really would like to get out of operating in such a big, deep LTIR pool. Of course, having that price contract on the books, in some ways it's convenient, but you don't really accrue cap space, and it just makes your life a little bit more difficult. And of course, you end up spending well above the cap here as well. So basically, in Montreal, we know there's a bunch of players that might be moved. As of today, it looks like the Montreal Canadiens most likely are not going to be a playoff team. As of the recording of this video, they currently are in last place in the Atlantic Division, although it's still not extremely out of the question that a team like Montreal or Detroit, Buffalo, that's lower and under playoffs, if they go on a good run quickly here sometime soon, there's still hope. I don't want to get people thinking there's no hope, but the way things are trending right now, it doesn't look favorable. We can say that with certainty. So, and regardless of how things are going for Montreal, even if they had a big turnaround, some of these guys most likely aren't coming back, like Dvorak, Armia. They won't be back next year. They're on expiring deals. There's no way that Montreal is going to re-sign him. They will attempt to trade him if they're able to, and if they're not able to, then they'll walk in the summer. So whether or not those guys get dealt, if they can find ways to get them off the books and get any kind of return, well, of course, that'll help their cap situation as well. You've also got Jake Evans, not a given that he gets re-signed. I would say it's possible, but again, another player that's a pending UFA, and it's debatable. They have players like Owen Beck and even Kapanen, who had a stint earlier, that appear pretty close or if not ready to take a spot. And, they have to make room for some of these guys if they're ever going to turn the roster over. So, they have players that are comparable that can do the same sort of job as Evans. That's why I'm not convinced they're going to bring him back. But, again, time will tell on that front. So, those are three players right there. Plus, you get David Savard in the final year of his deal. They've got a lot of good young D there they'd like to give more opportunity to. So I would think that he probably isn't back. So, again, that's lots of cap space right there that could be moved. And if they move some of those players, well, then they won't necessarily need to be in LTIR to make the price contract work for cap space, right? So if they can do that, then maybe we see a scenario if there's a team that wants to operate in LTIR and can really, spend above the cap and kind of manipulate that to be in their favor later in the year, then maybe the price contract gets moved. If not, I can see them finding a way to get it off their books in the offseason. But either way, I would suspect that the price contract for Montreal is something that's likely going to get moved sometime in the near future. Something that a strategy that they're trying to do, which makes sense. But again, it's just largely going to depend on what else they do between now and the deadline. Lots of these players, they like to get off the books, but there's not a lot of trade value in some of them, so it's debatable if it's going to happen or not. Now in Vancouver, we'll talk about them quickly before we switch to the state of New York and all the drama there. Of course, we did a video earlier today, and in case you missed it, I recommend you go check it out. It was based on Elliotte Friedman's latest 32 Thoughts podcast. Now, it came out this morning. I had to listen to it early today, and he doesn't usually do these things, but we learned a little bit more information later in the day as well, because Elliotte also appeared on Vancouver Media talking to Rick Dhaliwal and Don Taylor on their show and kind of expanded a little bit. So essentially he said, based on where Vancouver and Buffalo, where things are at, we know that the Sabres are, longest drought in playoffs in the NHL right now. Long time coming. They need to do something. The things are not going well. They're right back down to the basement. What if the Sabres next game is against Montreal? Montreal's the only team they're ahead of, and if they lose to Montreal can pull ahead of them. Like, what happens then? So obviously, the Canucks and the Sabres are, and I know there were some comments saying, what do you mean the Canucks are, they're like 13th, 14th place in the league? Like, yeah, the Canucks they're not having an awful season, but they've been struggling as of late. They have a terrible home record, and it's no secret that head coach Rick Tocchet and president Jim Rutherford are not pleased with where things are at and know that they can be a lot better. I'm not saying the Canucks are having a bad season or anything and they need to do something drastic, but it's mostly the Miller and Pettersson drama. Dhaliwal on his show today, he said it's no secret. They've known for years. Every coach that's come through there, whether it's, Travis Green, Bruce Boudreau, and now Rick Tocchet, they all know that Petey and Miller don't get along and don't have a great relationship. I think they've been trying to figure out managing this for some time. It's no secret. It just never seemed to be if they haven't had a great relationship in a long time, it never seemed to affect him as bad as it did until this past, probably the second half of last year. Because when he had a 100-point season 2 years ago, and the whole proposition here was, Friedman suggesting that if it comes down to that, they had to trade one of them. We know the Canucks are looking to do something to shake things up. He suggested Dylan Cousins and Bowen Byram for Elias Pettersson. And he said, who says no? Him and Kyle Bukauskas on the podcast both agreed if a team said no, it probably would be Vancouver. That might not be enough to part with their star centerman. Now, of course, we know Pettersson hasn't been quite himself. He's played a lot better in Miller's absence earlier. Miller comes back. His play cools off again. It just, I don't know. It just really seems to be affecting him. We know that Jim Rutherford went out of his way numerous times during Miller's absence to really protect him and, say that they're not trading him and, all this. So, I don't think that they want to move Miller. I'm not saying they want to move Pettersson either. I don't know. I kind of wonder how they would pick. Like what I said in the other video is not only do they need to really consider the fact that Pettersson's much younger, they both have the ability to hit 100 points. You have to decide who can you win with and what is your window to win and, what's the least likely deal that's going to be a big mistake. And it's hard to say, right? So, one thing that Friedman did say on the Donnie and Daly show later, though, was he did say that because on the podcast he said it was just his own thoughts. So that, it was just his own idea. Not that necessarily that it was being discussed, but he said later that he does know that Vancouver and Buffalo have had trade conversations, for sure. Doesn't mean that Pettersson's name was on the table or anything like that. But we know that the Sabres have considered Cousins and Byram as potential movement. I think there's some concern about signing Bo Byram long term, whether or not they can really afford to have another big ticket contract on the back end. Cousins has struggled since he signed that big contract. He's got lots of potential, but again, the last 2 years he's been regressing, even though he's still really young, which is weird. So, you got to figure that out too, right? So, at the end of the day, we don't know exactly what's going down, but Friedman did confirm that those two teams have talked, and it just seems to be a lot more information picking up that, the Canucks might actually do something big. Dhaliwal himself also said that he can confirm with what he's heard that the Canucks are super aggressive right now on the phones, trying to find a deal to shake things up, and that they're looking to make some moves. And we know Jim Rutherford's not afraid to be aggressive and to go out there and get something done. Like I said, after the after-hour segment on the weekend, you could tell Rutherford's not happy with the team. We heard Rick Tocchet make some comments that just don't appear like they're happy with the team. And it just looks like they're looking to do something big. I would be shocked if they traded Miller or Pettersson. But Pettersson does have a no-move clause. It doesn't kick in until July. If they were going to make that big kind of blockbuster deal, now would be the time. But it's hard to say. But something is going to probably happen there soon to shake things up. Brock Buster's name has been out there as well. Rutherford made no bones about bringing that up on the after-hours segment, saying how both the team and Besser's camp seem to have a difference in philosophy on what the next contract should look like and what the value would be. So, again, there seemed to be a big gap there, and how do they bridge that? We don't know. So, again, not a lot of new info, just that Elliott confirmed that Vancouver and Buffalo have had talks. We know for sure that Besser's camp is having a hard time getting a contract extension. And Dhaliwal then said that, like I said, that they've been extremely aggressive trying to shake things up. So, again, I wouldn't be surprised if either before the trade freeze on December the 20th or sometime early in the new year, we see the Canucks pull off something big. It's just hard to pinpoint exactly what it would be. Now, the two teams in New York, Buffalo, we'll start with them. Of course, they're on the road, like I said, in Montreal. They've lost 10 straight games. It's a winless streak because they have had 3 games that they lost in overtime. So think about that. In the last 10 games, you could have earned 20 points. They've got 3. I mean, that's pretty rough, right? I mean, obviously, at one point in the standings, a lot of those teams were kind of all lumped together there. And now they're a decent amount out of a playoff spot. It's not completely out of reach, but they would need to counteract that 10-game streak with almost like an 8 to 10 game streak on the other side, positively going the other way, just to kind of get back to square one. So, it's not looking good for the Sabres for playoffs this year. But we know that the owner, Terry Pegula went on a road trip to meet the team in Montreal. And, of course, he, along with GM Kevin Adams, they had a big meeting with the players today. They ended up canceling practice. And what we learned from that meeting essentially was that they are going to be patient. It doesn't sound like there's no chance Lindy Ruff's getting fired. He was just brought in. He's only been on the job a few months, so he's not going anywhere. It sounds like the owner gave the GM and the coach basically a good vote of confidence, saying he believes in them, that they're the right people to get the job done. And they also kind of basically come across the message that they really believe in the players and that they feel like the solutions to getting things turned around are already there and in the room. So basically, sounds like they all kind of sat around saying kumbaya and said, okay, we're better than this. We're going to dig our way out of it. And then that we shouldn't probably expect any kind of significant change here in the short term. But then reporters were kind of asking, when talking about this meeting, what happens if they lose to the Canadiens in their next game here and they end up going down in another spot in the standings and they end up in the absolute basement? Because that's what's going to happen if the Habs win. You have to think something's going to go down, right? We know they've had conversations with a lot of teams, including the Canucks, but it just seems like they are trying to be careful. Like I said, they've had a lot of players traded at a young age. Eichel and Reinhart, your two main examples, went on to have tremendous success, including being Stanley Cup champions on other teams. They don't want to screw that up. They don't want to have the same mistakes again. But I don't know how much longer they can be patient. I think Pegula's patience is probably a big part of the issue here. Look at how long they have been out of the playoffs, and they can't seem to get their act together. I feel like they've been rebuilding forever. They've had multiple lottery picks, including two defensemen that are really good players that were drafted first overall. Like, you get 2 first overall picks. There are teams that have rebuilt and are way ahead of them now that haven't had one. Like, come on, Buffalo. You got to get your act together. But the best we know from the meeting is it just doesn't sound like there's going to be anything drastic coming down the pipe here, like pronto. I think it's going to take a little bit more of the losing before something big happens. At least that's the impression that we got. But lots of names are out there. We know Adams has had conversations. It's like Bohm, Cousins, etc. But it just sounds like patience is the plan right now. So again, hard to say what happens in New York. Now this actually came from Steve Dangle, Steve's not normally an insider, but I know with the podcast network and everything he's built there, lots of contacts. I know, that are a part of his network. So I'm not sure who exactly he talked to, but I know he would have contacts that would have contacts themselves or have them be in the know here. So I trust his reports. But he was talking about on his latest podcast that he had some information on the Rangers, that they apparently also had a meeting, except it was players only, no GM, no ownership. And the consensus coming out of that meeting was that, because sometimes when you see these things happen, they don't want the coaches in the room. It's because they have issues with the coaches, and they kind of want to sort some stuff out themselves, maybe figure out, how can we get a new coach, or how can we make things better here, or whatever. That's not the case. Apparently he says that, if they feel like Laviolette is an issue, and it doesn't seem like they do, that if they do, it's not the biggest issue, and it's not the biggest problem or the biggest fish to fry right now. So it's not right at the top of the list here. He basically says that their biggest issue is the manager and Chris Drury, and that they want him to change his ways or to be gone. That they're not happy with how the Trouba thing was played out. They're not happy hearing how much of this information is being made public and leaked out, of what names are available and all these changes they want to make. You could probably date back to when in the summer or how Barclay Goodrow was handled. They're kind of, they're technically within their right. They're not doing anything illegal, but some people still view it as kind of being dirty in the way they're treating some of their, hardworking veteran players that have given so much to this franchise. And when you heard Trouba speak to the media after he was finally dealt to the Ducks, and he said that it was kind of a rite of passage to be fired by MSG, it's like, some people thought it was kind of just him taking a shot, but now they're saying, maybe that's kind of him speaking for the room, and that, they respected him more and than you would think, and that they didn't think he was the issue, right? So again, it's not even so much that they traded Trouba; It's how everything played out. And I think it's how much, information became public and how much is being leaked out. They just don't like how jury's going about things. So I'm not sure if they can really do a lot to make it change in that direction, but the player's not happy with management. And we do know a couple of things that he also said was that the general consensus that he learned is most players in there are content to be there and want to be Rangers and want to get things fixed and want to play better and want to get it turned around. So the fact that the bulk of the team does want to be Rangers is a good thing. But he said the one name that he's hearing that probably would like a fresh start is Capo Caco. And, of course, he had a healthy scratch the other game. They still lost. He's not part of the problem. I don't think his play is really the issue right now. But that he would definitely like more of an opportunity, a chance to make more money, and that he just, not thrilled with how things have gone since he's got there with, basically being pushed down the lineup and kept down there. Another thing, this doesn't come from Steve, but I've heard other reports, is kind of around Mika Zibanejad. Ice time in the last game was way down. Like, he normally plays like at least 18, 19 minutes a night, and his last ice time was only around like 13. It was Elliott talking about Zibanejad, just kind of with Kyle Bukowski saying, like, is there a possibility here with his ice time being down that they're trying to make him a little bit uncomfortable because he has a no move clause. And we know that, like I said, Elliott's had reported on 2-3 occasions that everybody pretty much outside of probably like Lafreniere and Shesterkin are available for the right deal. But some of them have no move clauses and would have to waive. Are they trying to make Mika want to be open to waiving by cutting down his role and his ice time? I don't know. Or is it just a case where, coach's decision wasn't playing well enough, cut it back because of that? It's hard to say. I guess we'll see if it becomes a trend or a pattern here. But, clearly there's probably are going to be more changes coming in New York. And I know based on what Steve was saying, it sure sounds like the belief is a Kako trade is very likely going to happen. It's hard to say if it happens before the roster freeze on December 20th, but sometime in the near future, it's expected that he probably will end up being the one to go. And I would think that if you do see a trade to shake things up, even though he's not really part of the issue, it's probably going to involve him. I do see some people saying as well, lots of people wondering if Joel Quenneville would be the guy to come in if they do decide to move on from Laviolette. But like I said before, the players, based on this players-only meeting, they don't seem to think he's the biggest problem. And I did see other reports as well suggesting that Laviolette was probably safe. So we'll see for right now. But the losing with the Rangers and the Sabres, they're trying to find ways to make the bleeding stop. And you know that when things are going that way, there's bound to be lots of speculation about change. And obviously these meetings and reports are, giving us all that information to suggest that the players want it as well to some degree. But like in Buffalo, patience, I don't know. I think patience will be run out. Hard to imagine that. But let me know your thoughts on all of today's rumors and reports, and we'll discuss further in the comment section. Of course, stay tuned for more information here. Lots of posts here every day to keep you up to date with all the news and rumors around all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.